Robert Redford's story doesn't start in Hollywood lights. It begins in the modest streets of Santa Monica, California in 1936. Picture this: a young boy growing up in a small home, surrounded not by luxury, but by struggle, discipline, and an almost hidden spark of creativity. His father was a chemist, a man of science, strict and practical. His mother, a talented illustrator bursting with imagination. And it was her influence that planted the very first seeds of rebellion in Robert's mind. But here's the twist. This wasn't the childhood of someone destined for stardom. Redford was the kid most people overlooked, the boy who daydreamed too much, who wanted more than what his neighborhood offered. He didn't fit the mold. Teachers labeled him as restless. Neighbors whispered that he'd probably never amount to much. But deep inside, Robert carried a hunger, a spark of ambition that would later turn him into one of Hollywood's most powerful names. What's shocking is how close that spark was to being extinguished before it even began. Had one small decision gone differently, Robert Redford wouldn't have been an actor at all. He would have lived an entirely different life, far away from fame, fortune, and Paul Newman. At first, Robert followed the safe path. He studied architecture at the University of Colorado. Think about that for a second. One of the most iconic actors of all time nearly became a man designing buildings instead of starring in movies. No fame, no Hollywood, no Sundance. Just another quiet life, on paper. But then everything unraveled. He started skipping classes, failing to follow the straight line his father wanted for him, and the whispers started again. Redford's wasting his life. He was on the edge of throwing away his future, and then scandal. Redford admitted later that during those years he spiraled into reckless choices, drinking too much, drifting too far, chasing escapes instead of responsibilities. His carefully planned path collapsed. For most people, this would have been the end of the story: a failed student, a wasted talent. But Redford didn't stay down. Instead, that collapse became the turning point. He left Colorado, headed east, and walked into the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. This was a gamble. He had no guarantees, no connections, and no money. Yet within those academy walls, something clicked. His restless energy, his charm, his hunger, it all transformed into raw talent. Suddenly, the boy who wouldn't amount to anything became the man every casting director couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a new chapter, it was Robert Redford's rebirth. And it set him on a collision course with Paul Newman, a partnership that would redefine Hollywood forever. Hollywood in the late 1960s was cutthroat. New faces came and went like shadows, most swallowed up before anyone even remembered their names. And yet, what came next was the kind of rise that most actors only dream of. But for Redford, it was reality. The 1970s turned him into Hollywood's golden boy. One blockbuster after another: The Sting, All the President's Men, The Great Gatsby, 3 Days of the Condor. Each role wasn't just successful, it was defining. He wasn't playing characters anymore, he was becoming an idea, America's rebel, America's golden hero. But here's where it gets fascinating. With fame came pressure, and with pressure came rumors. Hollywood insiders whispered about his perfectionist streak, about how he could clash with directors, even with co-stars. Some claimed Redford's quiet intensity wasn't just method acting, it was him demanding to control the spotlight. And yet, while others cracked under fame, Redford thrived. Every role stretched his image further. Political thrillers, romances, dramas, he could do it all. But the truth is, his success wasn't just talent. It was also fueled by his unique partnership with Paul Newman. Their bond wasn't just friendship, it was competitive fire. Redford once admitted that Newman pushed him harder than anyone else ever could, forcing him to reach higher, dig deeper, and prove he deserved his place among Hollywood's elite. By the late 70s, Redford wasn't just a star. He was a cultural force, but success always comes at a price. And Redford was about to gamble everything on a risky move that could either destroy him or make him immortal. By the late 70s, Robert Redford was untouchable. He had the fame, the fortune, and the kind of Hollywood power most actors only fantasize about. But here's the twist. He wasn't satisfied. Redford hated how Hollywood treated films like disposable products, obsessed with profit and control. And so, in 1980, he made a move that stunned the industry. He built his own empire, far from Los Angeles in the mountains of Utah. It was called the Sundance Institute. At first, people laughed at him. They called it a vanity project, a playground for a rich actor who wanted to pretend he was more than just a movie star. Hollywood insiders mocked the idea that independent film, low budgets, no-name directors, unconventional stories could ever compete with big studios, but Redford was ahead of his time. What started as a tiny experiment exploded into the Sundance Film Festival, now the most powerful launchpad for independent cinema in the world. Quentin Tarantino, the Coen brothers, Darren Aronofsky, countless careers were born there. Redford didn't just change movies, he changed culture. But here's the scandalous irony. While Redford was busy saving independent film, his own personal life was unraveling in ways that no one saw coming. Behind the cameras, Redford's life was filled with as much drama as his films, maybe even more. He married young in 1958 to Lola Van Wagenen. They built a family, 4 children, a picture-perfect life. But tragedy struck fast. Their first child, Scott, died in infancy. The loss was devastating, leaving scars on the family that never fully healed. And while Robert's career soared higher with every passing year, at home, things were quietly breaking apart. The marriage that once looked so strong slowly began to crumble. Friends whispered about distance, about Redford burying himself in work, about how the Hollywood spotlight is never kind to a private love life. By the 1980s, the couple had separated, though neither ever publicly admitted the details. The Redfords were too private for scandals in the tabloids, but everyone knew something was wrong. And yet Redford wasn't done with love. In 1996, he met a woman who would change everything. Sibylle Sagers, a German painter with a fire and independence that matched his own. After more than a decade together, they married in 2009. But this wasn't the young, reckless love of Hollywood fairy tales. This was mature, weathered, and grounded in survival. Still, even in the peace he found later in life, Redford carried the weight of his losses. A son gone too soon, a marriage broken, a reputation constantly under the microscope. And all the while, his connection with Paul Newman was becoming the most important friendship of his life, a bond that went deeper than Hollywood ever imagined. In Hollywood, friendships usually last about as long as a movie contract. Betrayal, jealousy, egos. Most bonds crack the moment the cameras stop rolling. But Robert Redford had one friendship that broke all the rules, and it was with Paul Newman. From the outside, their partnership looked almost too perfect. 2 of the most handsome, talented actors of their generation. Side by side in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Sting. On screen, they were unstoppable, but what most people never knew was just how deep their connection went behind the scenes. Industry insiders whispered about it constantly. How could 2 men so famous, so competitive, so powerful not end up clashing? The truth? They did clash. Redford later admitted they pushed each other, argued, even battled for dominance at times. But instead of breaking them apart, that fire only made their friendship stronger. On set, it was electric. They had an unspoken language, looks, nods, improvisations that turned ordinary lines into unforgettable moments. Directors didn't even try to control it. They just let the two of them work their magic. And off camera, Newman wasn't just a co-star, he was Redford's rock. The man he could trust in an industry where trust was almost extinct. For decades, fans speculated, what was the real story behind Redford and Newman? Were they rivals, brothers, something else entirely? The mystery only grew until finally, at age 89, Robert Redford revealed the truth. After staying silent for nearly his entire life, Robert Redford finally spoke out about Paul Newman, and what he revealed was shocking. He was more than a friend, Redford said. He was like a brother. But it wasn't just brotherhood. Redford explained that Newman had a way of making everyone around him better. Even at the height of fame, Newman stayed humble, grounded, generous. While Hollywood devoured others, Newman never let the industry destroy his humanity. And Redford admitted he envied it. He needed it. Newman's example kept him from losing himself in the madness of celebrity. He told stories of long nights where they sat together, not as movie stars, but as men, dissecting life, fame, fear, and failure. They shared secrets no one else would ever hear. They laughed until dawn. They supported each other through heartbreak, through scandal, through the crushing weight of being Hollywood legends. Redford confessed that their friendship wasn't about movies at all. It was survival. And when Paul Newman passed away, a part of Redford's world collapsed forever. Even decades later, the grief still lingers. But here's the most powerful part. Redford said Newman taught him a lesson no role, no award, no amount of fame could ever give. That real success is measured by kindness, integrity, and the lives you touch. At 89 years old, Redford finally dropped the mask, letting the world see what those closest to him always knew. That behind the Hollywood legend was a man shaped, challenged, and forever changed by the one friendship he could never replace. Robert Redford has lived the kind of life most of us can barely imagine. Hollywood glory, heartbreaking loss, cultural impact that will last forever. But in the end, none of those blockbusters, awards, or headlines defined him the way one man did: Paul Newman. At 89, Redford didn't brag about his legacy. He didn't list his films or his accomplishments. He opened up about friendship, loyalty, and the rare kind of bond that fame can't touch. The world saw two movie stars. Redford saw a brother. And maybe that's the real secret here. Success isn't the box office. It isn't the fame. It's who you become when the cameras shut off and the people who still stand by your side when the spotlight fades. So when Robert Redford finally broke his silence about Paul Newman, he wasn't just sharing Hollywood gossip. He was reminding us of something far more powerful. In the end, the roles, the awards, the fame, all disappear, but true friendship, that's the legacy that lasts forever.